Okay. Go live. Okay, we are live. All right. Here we go. Start back from the top. All right. Here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation on this Tuesday afternoon, a lunchtime edition of KFTV Live. CP the franchise in the building. On the other side, we got our guy, Knicks Insider. He covers the Knicks for The Athletic, making his return to the show. He goes by the name James Edwards III. That's his government. But on this show, shout out to Cody Glock. We got Trilogy back in the building. On today's show, we're going to take a look inside this improved Knicks defense, talk a little Mikal Bridges and the like. Knicks on a 4-game winning streak after washing the Memphis Grizzlies last night, man, 143-106. So let's get into it, man. Lock in, hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Today's show is sponsored by Mando Whole Body Deodorant, man. Use code KFTV to get $5 off the starter pack. And shout out to our sponsors of today's show. Shout out to Mando, man. All right, let's get into it. Trilogy, man. James, how you feeling, man? How you feeling today?
I'm well, man. Good to see you. I hope you had a good New Year. I don't know what the expiration date is. I'm wishing somebody a good New Year, but I ain't see you. I haven't talked to you since before then, so I hope it went well.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to be back. The Trilogy nickname is stuck. I'm appreciative of that. And then when you say it, you have a very good tone to your voice. I do feel like I'm like at Rucker with that nickname, like getting my shit off and like you're emceeing, like, so like I'm rolling. I'm all the way in.
Yeah, man, we got to put some respect on it, man. But you know, all due to the respect of your work at The Athletic and in perfect timing, man, because I just read your piece this morning after last night's 143-106 rout over the Grizzlies, and it was right on time because for me, this game and even the Kings game, you know, the Knicks can sleepwalk into offense at any point, given the depth of the starting five. But to me, their path to true contendership lies in their defense, and it's been fantastic, especially last night against a Memphis Grizzlies team who was leading the league in points per game at 124. You hold them to 106, and your key guy, Mikal Bridges, sets the tone, man. What were your impressions of this defense last night?
Yeah, to me, it was kind of what everybody's been looking for most of the season. And not to say they didn't do it. They've done it in spurts here, spurts there, but for pretty much all 48 to have the kind of connectivity that they did defensively. And it wasn't always flashy. Like, yeah, they had 20 steals, but a lot of those steals came because everybody just did their job. There was no gambling. There was nobody a step slow in their rotation. There was nobody just sagging off a shooter just enough to open up a passing lane to get it for the other team to get a three. Like, I just thought they were just on their P's and Q's, whether that was communication or just like everybody just having a job and doing it. And that's kind of been the most fascinating thing with this Knicks team so far this year, and why I've been kind of hesitant to put them into true contendership is the defense just hasn't been there consistently. And they have a lot of shiny parts. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, obviously Precious Achiuwa finding his footing. But there's just been something about them being able to do it together collectively. And I thought the Memphis game and a good portion of the Kings game, but the way that Memphis has played the season, they came in hot. They're one of the most fun and fast-paced offenses. The Knicks just shut them down. And I think a lot of it was just being fundamentally sound. And we just don't see that enough from this Knicks team. And there's going to be flaws with the defense, right? Like, they do have holes in their defense. But for the most part, if they're able to just stay on a string, if they're able to do what they're supposed to do and not get out of themselves, like, I think they can be better than they have been. And I think we saw that against Memphis.
Several times throughout the course of the season, especially after tough losses, they always talk about communication, especially Josh Hart. We got to communicate better. We got to stay on the same page. And you see those breakdowns in certain games, end of game situations where, you know, they get put to rotations and things kind of get out of whack. But that to me is fixable. You know, sharpening up the communication and making sure everybody's on a string, especially when you have guys like an OG out there who's more of a gambler, things can get out of whack. And so knowing where guys are going to be, anticipating where guys are going to be, and communicating effectively can be fixed. Have you seen any schematic changes defensively through Tibbs in terms of kind of just helping these guys just be a little bit better?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is the variations he's used Cat. It felt like there was more of he was in a higher drop against the Grizzlies last night, as opposed to the deeper drop. Which even like I understand why you put Cat in a deeper drop, right? But sometimes mixing it up and having him up top and or closer to the point of attack allows just like the ball handler to feel two guys at the same time. Pause and Mikal being able to fight through screens and making contact first, like I thought that was huge, and just him kind of setting the tone with his physicality and his presence. I think that's a big thing that I think that they circle in more. And then you also like look at Precious, his ability to guard. They can switch with Precious. He can get higher up to the level of the screen. Playing him more is helpful, and the fact that he's healthy allows them to kind of be a little bit different in their coverage with him as opposed to Cat. So I do think there are little wrinkles here, but I think ultimately like it just needed to get down to communication and just making sure that everybody's doing their job. I think the biggest thing that people maybe forget is Mikal has kind of made a living as a guy who's been able to gamble. Josh has been able to gamble. OG's been able to gamble. Like those are three guys who part of why people love them defensively is they're able to kind of cause chaos. But what comes with that is you have two guys at a time or maybe three guys at a time all trying to do what helps make them special defenders, and that can break down the core of your defense. And I just thought that there's times to cause chaos, there's times to take chances. And I thought everything was timed perfectly against Memphis. And I think that's just the biggest thing is everybody doing their job defensively, just staying within their principles that Tibbs has, but still being able to be themselves. And I thought there was a good combination of that. And when everybody else is doing their job, somebody like OG can gamble and it doesn't break down the whole defense.
Yeah, great points there. And especially with Mikal, as you stated, I mean, just a fantastic game from his effort on John Morant to leading the team with 28 points. His efficiency has been off the charts. He just seems a lot more comfortable. And even in the beginning when he first got here, I understood and preached that, he's got to get chemistry with these guys. He's got to get acclimated to his new role. But I didn't see that effort, that tenacity every night from him. That's where I was kind of like, you got to step it up, man. This is New York. This ain't Brooklyn. Like, you're under the microscope here, and we're trying to win a chip. So you got to be a dog at least on the defensive end. Your effort and energy has to be there every night. And it just seems like he's just more consistent in that regard. Have you noticed that?
I think that's a fair point. I think with time that was going to come. But I do think there's an adjustment period for him. Aside from offensively going from the guy that's like the number one option, he's got to figure out how he fits in with where he's the number 3.5 option. So there's that, right? And then he's on defense. He's never been hit with this many screens. Like he's been often kind of used in an OG and a no. Like he's been used on the ball. Like that's part of what makes him a special defender. But he's also played a lot off the ball in his career and been able to kind of take those chances and be a guy that stunts and makes plays a pass away, two passes away. But here in New York, it's primarily as the on-ball defender for the point of attack, and that's an adjustment. That takes a lot of energy out of you. So you're trying to balance like a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands on offense, wanting to still be able to produce on offense, but with that kind of commitment that they need from him defensively, that's going to take some of the energy. And I think he's just found a good balance of accepting his role offensively, being a guy who's a spot-up shooter, a guy who's creating opportunities in transition, a guy who's creating opportunities when there's mismatches, as opposed to not necessarily like trying to force things. I think a lot of his offense has come naturally and within the flow of the offense, and that's a positive. That with that you use less energy, and he's been able to kind of assert himself defensively. And I'm sure he gets up for certain matchups more than others. Like that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And when you're going against a Ja Morant and a De'Aaron Fox, well, obviously De'Aaron wasn't 100%, but like you have to be locked in for guys that are blurs like that. And I thought Mikal was great. And the biggest thing, like you mentioned, is his presence wasn't always. He never made ball handlers feel his presence every night. And he's not the biggest dude, like in terms of frame, but like he's long as shit. He can touch his knees standing straight up.
Yeah.
He can get through screens. I think he's wiry strong. And you didn't always watch that and like this guy's making his presence felt. Looked like at times he didn't want to get hit by screens. He was trying to go around the long way so he didn't get hit. Here I thought, or at least the last few games and at points leading up to around Christmas up to now, I think he's done a better job of just making his presence felt and kind of hitting first. And I think that's gone a long way. Like when you're playing hard, not to say he wasn't playing hard, but when you're playing hard, I think that I think it trickles down not just to everybody in terms of them playing hard, but it helps your defense in general, right? Like when you're not getting beat by 3 dribbles or 3 feet off a screen, like it doesn't put Cat on an island. It allows if you're able to stay on a guy's hip and Cat's able to be up a little bit more on the screen, like that. John Morant feels that, right? Like so, I think him just being able to be put more pressure on the ball and just be more assertive in terms of making the ball handler feel him has paid off dividends for him.
Yeah, great points there. CP the franchise, James Edwards the third, aka Trilogy on the ones and twos. Salute to everybody in the chat and salute to everybody on the lunchtime grind, man. Wherever you guys are watching, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X. If you guys are at work right now, throw a hashtag grind in the chat. Let us know that you guys are in here. And also, hey, if you guys want to call in and talk to Trilogy, man, call us on the KFTV Discord. In Tibbs We Trust, we see you there. So just give us a quick second and we'll get to you on the Discord. More on Bridges, especially offensively with the balance, as you said. A lot of guys require usage on this team. You have 5 guys who are capable in terms of putting the ball in the hole. Jalen is going to require usage. Karl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart. He seems to, as you said, fit in well and just go with the flow of the offense. But then there's times where you see Tibbs noticeably running plays for him. Right. You know, if Jalen and Towns are on the bench, last night Jalen gets in foul trouble. It seems like I like how he can switch it on when those guys aren't on the court and kind of run that offense himself.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think that the best version of Mikal Bridges for this team was always going to be if he could find the perfect blend between being Phoenix Mikal and Brooklyn Mikal. And I'd say 80% of the time he's spending it as quote-unquote Phoenix Mikal, where he's blending in, low maintenance offensively, letting his game come within the flow of the game. And then there are times, like you said, when there's foul trouble or maybe Jalen and Cat don't have it going, or there's mismatches that call for Mikal to post up, right? Like I think we've seen that a lot where they've tried to isolate Mikal on the block against smaller guards. Like he's able to tap back into that, and that's what they paid for. That's what their vision was, and I think he's done a good job of just like finding his role with this team, still doing it so that he can get his touches, but also being able to understand that like this team needs him to be a bulldog point of attack defender. They just need it for given their kind of restraints with Jalen and Cat.
Right.
They need that, and I think it just took a little bit of time. Now, to be fair, there's going to be ups and downs. There's probably going to be another spell where people are like, "What's going on with Mikal Bridges?" But like that's the cost of doing business when you're guarding the best player on the other team every night. And you're a shooter. Like shooters just don't always shoot well. So, but I do think for the most part he's been consistent in the way he's guarded pick and rolls. I think he's been consistent in the way he's let offense come to him, and I think that's just where they needed to kind of settle in at and let him find that. And they've done a good job of that. And I think Jalen and Cat deserve a lot of credit too for rewarding guys when they are open. For playing within the flow of the offense, even though they are the offense, but like making sure that the ball is scattered around. And then also when you create turnovers, it creates opportunities for guys to get easy buckets. So
yeah,
I think it's a good combination, a good blend that the Knicks have with Mikal Bridges right now. Now it's just a matter of making sure that defensively that can be consistent more often than it has been up to this point.
Great points. And 26 Memphis turnovers leading to 36 Knicks points. And that was a big emphasis for me in terms of how they were going to beat this team. You know, Memphis, as good as their offense is and as good as they are in all facets of the game, they will cough the ball up. 29th in the league in turnovers. And so that Knicks defense was very opportunistic and was able to catch this team, you know, offset in fast break situations, and they did an incredible job of doing that. And my second game ball from last night's game was Precious Achiuwa, man. You know, this was the version of Precious who last year around this time really asserted himself after that trade was made. When Julius went down, his versatility was critical for this team. 14 points, 6 of 9 shooting in that game last night. And he spoke about in the locker room getting adjusted to coming back from the hamstring injury mentally. So it seems like that kind of limited him in terms of how aggressive he wanted to be out there as to avoid injury. But his versatility has certainly been on display, not just last night, but as of late. And it's you know, paying dividends, a lot of dividends for this team.
For sure. No, it's a good point. I think his archetype, his ability to move in space, like allows the Knicks to play a little bit more aggressively when he's on the floor defensively. I think you could tell he has a little hop in his step, a little spring in his step. He was just flying all over the floor last night, protecting the rim well. And I think he's a guy who, offensively, you obviously want him to be low maintenance. You want him to set screens, DHOs, roll, make the right read, right? But when you're creating turnovers and he likes to play fast, he's a guy that really likes to get out in transition. If he gets a rebound, he likes to push it up the floor a little bit. He just helps change the pace of the team. And Tibbs talked a lot about that in the preseason. He thought the bench would play a lot faster with Cam and Deuce and even Shamet before he was gone and then came back, and then Precious as well. And they play fast. And he is a guy who's flying all over the floor defensively as of late, and then offensively just obviously presents himself as a lob threat. Definitely, you could tell, I think, for the first few weeks, months from the hamstring, he wasn't a guy he didn't necessarily have that kind of oomph that I had seen. Obviously, I didn't watch every single game last year, but when I would tune in, or previous Precious seasons on other teams, like you saw a little bit of that oomph. That seemed like that was missing, and you can understand why hamstrings are a tricky thing. They can pop up on you at any time, and there's probably days it didn't feel well, but it certainly looks like he's feeling closer to himself. And I think the big thing with him is, again, I didn't watch every game last year, but it felt like when I did watch the Knicks that Precious was a guy who would get hit with kind of ticky-tack fouls, be out of position, just fouls that he didn't need to make, maybe being a step slow or going too fast. And this year he doesn't really foul that much. I think he's averaging 1.4 a game. He was averaging 2.1 during his time last year with the Knicks. Like, he's been playing smart. He knows where to be. The game's not too chaotic for him. I think he's really settled into that. And he's one of those guys too that, like, sneakily is like young.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Precious and you think he's like 28, 29,
right.
30. I think he's what, 24, 25, 26. Like, he's still a young guy and still a young player. But he certainly looks like the game is slowing down for him.
Yeah, very much so. He's 25.
Boy, yeah, I always I'd see I'm in the locker room next to him and talking to him, like, you just kind of forget how young he is. You think he's like early 30s.
Born in 1999, man. He's a young whippersnapper. The oldest player on the team is Josh Hart, right? Josh Hart. I don't know if he turned 30 yet, but he's creeping up on 30.
I think he might be 30, 31. Cat's 30. So Josh must be 30, older by a couple months. I think
Hart is 29, March 6th.
Wait, how old's Cat then?
Towns? I don't think Towns is 30 yet.
I think Cat might turn 30 this year. You might be right.
Let's see. Towns, Josh Hart, March 6th. Towns, 29.
Yeah.
November 15th.
Gosh, that makes me feel old. I remember when I first started covering the NBA, there was only like one guy older than me on, like, when I was covering those Pistons teams, and now I'm the oldest guy in the Knicks locker room by 3 years. I'm 32, and it's just like, it's nuts, man. It's crazy. It's sad.
Yeah, man, I'm 40, man. I'm old as hell, man. But you know what? I'm leaning into it. Man. I'm leaning into it. You know what I'm saying? Salute to everybody.
Got to at this point.
Yeah,
though.
you got to, man. Salute to everybody in the chat. Once again, hit that like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. CP the Franchise Trilogy in the building. Salute to everybody out there on the grind. Ron Pierre Jr., I see you. Brightest Future. We got G5 We. Salute Al Jarski in the building. Jose M. D-Dub. Salute to you guys, man. Everybody watching on the Facebook side, we see you. And everybody on IG, man, we see you as well. On the Precious thing, it's very interesting because not to, certainly want to enjoy this season and don't want to look too far ahead, but he's only on a $6 million deal. Only 1 year deal, final year of his deal. He did, as part of getting that bag, there was no market for him in the offseason, so part of getting that bag, he kind of waived that technical no trade that he had coming to him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if he continues playing like this, if his market value goes up. That's going to be an interesting decision for these guys to make as they creep near that second apron in the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's even going to be interesting for the next 2 weeks or week with the deadline coming up, right? Like, if you would have asked me 2-3 weeks ago, do I think that they would have tried to upgrade the center position? I think the answer would have been yes. The Knicks are telling teams that Mitch is around the corner. The things we hear, the things I've heard doesn't really suggest that, right? Like, we have not been told by Tom that he's running yet, and I just find it really hard to believe that a 7-footer coming off a foot problem who hasn't started sprinting yet is around the corner. But that could also be obviously a tactic not to look desperate in terms of, like, they need to trade Precious or they need to trade Jericho. And I think that's a big thing for New York right now. Like, this is a team that usually does its trade work before the deadline. And I think the fact that they haven't yet and the deadline's a week away kind of suggests to me that they're holding out to see as long as they can to see where Mitch is, while keeping Precious and Jericho as kind of insurance and as centers behind Cat. But like if you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, I'm not sure that. I mean, Precious was the human, the human trade. What do they call those things? Trade exception.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like it was basically destined for him to get traded. It felt like.
That's right.
And I think that this team, with the way he's playing, the uncertainty surrounding Mitch, I feel less likely that he gets moved by next week as opposed to maybe a few weeks ago, right? I think this team is more likely to upgrade or add a wing than it is a big man right now. Obviously, I'm sure it depends on who's available and becomes available, and who New York could tangibly get with its limited asset pool. But the way Precious is playing, I think it certainly makes me raise the question: like, I'd be less surprised now than like I said, I would 2 months ago that Precious is on the team after the deadline. Like I said, he's playing well. The uncertainty with Mitch. Cat obviously has history of foul trouble, and he's had issues with injuries too over his career, right? So they do need some assurance there. I think the Knicks are more likely to marginally address the wing issue, so that they can play less minutes for their main three guys. But we'll see. But I do think Precious has made himself an interesting case, because, like you said, he's playing really well, and it felt like once he signed that deal, it was destined for him to get traded by the time the deadline came. But I'm curious to see how that plays out now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they can trade. They can afford to trade him. Just how versatile he is, his comfort with this team, the chemistry with this team, two-way player right now. And it's like, I agree with you. I think they need to address the wing position, but with his salary in every trade scenario I see, and of course, Leon and these guys always pull a rabbit out of a hat. You never know, but it's always like his salary's more like an aggregator. And they can't even afford to aggregate depth, to get one or two guys extra in here. They can't afford it.
Right. Yeah, the Mitchell thing really put a monkey wrench in, I think, one, what they thought the ceiling could be for this team as soon as this year, and two, the ability to tinker in season, because I can't see a team, and talking to people around the league, I can't see a team trading for Mitchell without knowing, one, that he's healthy, and two, if he's not healthy, the Knicks attaching assets to him. And I just don't think New York's in the position to attach assets just to get rid of Mitchell Robinson.
No, that doesn't make sense. Even a name like a Chris Boucher, who I like, and from a wing standpoint, versatility, shooting the ball well for Toronto, $10 million. Make it $10 million.
You would have to trade him and Deuce to get there. Yeah, that's just not worth it.
Those things just don't make sense. And so I think the pathway that makes the most sense, you had a proposed trade, I think last week, that I liked, and that was involving Jericho Sims potentially for like a Javonte Green. I think that would be
something like that.
Perfect. I think that would be a perfect swap. Somebody that can come in, I call it an innings eater for a baseball term, but that can eat up minutes, play physical, play tough, and give Josh Hart and OG and Bridges a spell as they, make that second half push.
Yeah, no, I think that's been discussed in some way. I think that type of move, particularly, like obviously Jericho is out of the rotation, and they can, while they obviously need some assurance or insurance with Mitchell's situation up in the air, they can afford to move on from, kind of rearrange the chairs, move on from Jericho. Precious eats up the backup minutes behind Cat. If something happens, I'll knock on wood for all Knicks fans, you still have Ariel Huck-Porty there to eat up some minutes if need be, right? They don't really have the wing depth that they need. They have the three starters, Landry Shamet, who's been in and out of the rotation. Then after that, there's really been nobody else. So I think that's the type of move we see from New York over the next week, if there is one. Something like that, where it's like your average NBA fan be like, who the hell is Javonte Green, or who the hell is Simone Fontecchio, right? But they're guys who can eat minutes, who can be productive, and in a pinch, if you need them to close a game, they're good enough to close a game. I think those are the type of moves that we see from New York, as opposed to anything splashy, just because they can't do anything without involving Mitchell.
Right.
Obviously, assuming that none of the starters are going to get moved, which nobody expects. But without moving Mitchell, they can't really move the needle in terms of adding something substantial or a name people might know between now and the deadline.
Have there been any rumblings in terms of potentially now? They would still have to make some adjustments here to get these guys in that last roster spot. But T.J. Warren, I even look at Achiuwa Okeke down in the G League. Any rumblings and potentially adding those guys during that vet minimum kind of March time frame?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that presented itself, especially if there's nothing that is there for the Knicks at the deadline. They do have an open roster spot, as you said. I don't think they can fill it with a signing until March 1st, I believe. So there might be some time there. I need to double check that, but I think that's the case. But I definitely could see something like that. Maybe they go into the playoffs with 14 guys. I'd be surprised. Like, why not just add somebody? They're at that point, you're far enough away from the second apron that you could do it. But T.J. Warren obviously is a guy who's played a lot of basketball in this league, has looked good in the G League, and just to have another body out there available, I think would be helpful. But certainly, I think that's something we could see if they're not able to pull something off in the next week.
Shout out to Rayon Mod in the chat. He says, can you ask James about Utah as a potential trade partner with Walker Kessler? I think a lot of Knicks fans are still holding out hope, keeping the light on for a Walker Kessler trade.
This is, in my experience covering the league and talking to teams who have dealt with or in the process of dealing with Utah and Danny Ainge, asking price is high for a lot of guys.
Always.
Walker Kessler seems to be no exception. Financially, he obviously has the money that can make it work. I just don't think New York is willing to. I just don't think like the Washington pick moves the needle for Utah. That's 2 seconds. It's not a first. That's not going to convey to a first. Washington's not going to be good enough for that to convey. 2 seconds. You don't really see Utah doing that, and I don't think I don't think New York should be trading its 2030 pick swap on somebody like Walker Kessler. You keep that close to the chest for something presents itself. I just don't see how it happens. Just given what usually the asking price is for Danny Ainge players. Yeah. Especially ones who are productive and on very cheap deals. Yeah,
that's not bargain basement. He's not helping anybody out. You got to pay to play with Danny Ainge, and so I just don't see that. But hey, anything is possible. My thought is that as you said, that the Mitch thing is kind of cryptic in terms of non-committal in terms of when he's going to come back. They said he was supposed to practice end of this month. It was January 28th. Yeah. We had January 28th, so. I don't know. But, hey, if these guys can play this way and he comes back by April, hey, so be it. Because the way this defense is playing, you add in a Mitchell Robinson, even if he's at, 80% of who he was, I think this helps move the needle, especially defensively for this team. Man.
Yeah, that could be your deadline addition. I have been under the impression that, I'll just say this. If you told me Mitch started practicing in 3 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me Mitch doesn't start practicing until March, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me Mitch does not play a game this season for the Knicks, I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow.
He's a 7-footer with a foot injury.
Yeah.
Who underwent surgery in May, correct? Sorry, I have my date. Underwent surgery in May, and it's end of January, and he's still not sprinting. Something just doesn't seem right.
Doesn't seem right. Yeah. I hear you, man. I'm a little bit on the optimistic side because that's my guy. I want to see him get out there and get revenge on Joel Embiid and these guys and everybody talking spicy, man. That's my guy, Mitch.
I hope the best for him. Like you want to see him. You want to see everybody healthy. It's been a long time and the guy can't sprint yet. That's it's interesting. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Very, very much so, man. Good points by you. CP the Franchise, James Edwards, a.k.a. Trilogy in the building. Salute to everybody in the chat, wherever you guys are watching worldwide. David Dominique, what's the 411 on the return of Robinson? Yeah, you just got it there, man. So we'll see what happens there. Pedro Peguero on the Facebook says, Mitch to San Antonio for Sohan and Champagny. So he's making...
I think the Knicks would do that deal. Yeah, I don't think I don't think San Antonio would.
I don't think San Antonio's doing that one. But hey,
Yeah.
we can always dream. Let's see. We did ask the fan base if they had some questions on the Twitter side and on YouTube. So let me pull that up and see what these guys are saying here. Let's see some questions for Trilogy. Ian Begley saying Randall could be a Miami candidate, and Jimmy, the whole Jimmy Butler saga, man. I'm tired of that. I'm ready for that to be over with.
Same here. I actually a few weeks ago I tweeted something about Jimmy going back to me. I think they could use a Jimmy Butler. Like, with all due respect to Mike Conley, who's a ultimate professional.
Yeah.
But they need, I think, it's hard to call obviously Jimmy the basketball player an adult, right? But
yeah,
they need an adult in the room who can still play.
Right.
And I think Ant and Jimmy would be perfect for each other personality-wise.
Yeah,
I would like that deal if that's there.
I agree. Definitely agree with you there. I don't know what Miami was thinking, bringing him back into practice. Like, what are you expecting to happen here, man?
They baited him. They knew what he would do once. Hey, bro, you're not starting.
Yeah.
They knew he would turn around. They could just slap another. So they knew what was going on.
AKA, we need more time to execute a trade, because I don't know what's going on with Bradley Beal. Like, does he want to go to South Beach? Is he gonna wait to no trade contract clause?
I think, from what I've read and the little I know, I think Bradley is a guy who very much is not like somebody who appears to like to change routine, change lifestyle. Like, wherever he goes, he'll have to go without his family.
Yeah.
He's lucky enough to get that no trade clause. He doesn't need to do it. I think for him, it would have to make sense in both basketball wise and personal life. And I just know people do not value that contract well enough that the teams that he may waive it for are knocking on Phoenix's door.
Yeah, tricky. And yeah, sometimes people don't think about that, man. Like, guys got to uproot. You got to move your family. You got to move your kids, switch schools and things of that nature. So definitely.
And it's not like Phoenix is trash. Like, they're not. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They still have Kevin Durant. They still have Devin Booker. It's warm. His family's there. Like, they're not going to not play Bradley Beal. He might come off the bench. He's not going to not play. So, yeah, I think for him, it's, again, I don't know him. You hear stuff and you read stuff. I certainly think that for him, it's about comfort.
Makes sense.
I understand that. Listen, you live one life, man.
Yeah.
Do whatever makes you happy. I'm not, if you don't, don't pick up the trade clause because it makes other people happy. Do what makes you happy. You live one life.
True. Good points there. Someone on the Twitter side, shout out to Mendoza Tweets. First, he was asking about Mitch, and we answered that. But Kevin McCullers, he was a guy from Kansas, ACL injury. Doesn't seem like there's any return timeline. Anything you hearing on Kevin McCullers? What's up with him?
I get asked about Kevin McCullar more than any player, and I was warned when I moved over to New York that Knicks fans love the players that they don't know, if the unknown.
We want that diamond in the rough, man. We want that
they
diamond
love
in
that.
the rough, man.
And it was the same in Detroit, but because they were bad the last few years, those guys would end up playing, and so people could quickly make their assumption on if they liked them or not.
Yeah.
Here, I'll say this, and I reported at camp that the Knicks were very much aware that Kevin McCullar would be out for a long time. They drafted him knowing that. A lot of teams, Kevin McCullar without an injury would have been drafted much higher than Kevin McCullar went with the injuries. It was well known throughout the NBA that this is a guy who very skilled, but the health has not been in his favor, and it may not be in his favor. The Knicks were one of those teams that had the luxury of taking a chance, like, okay, maybe if he can get his knee, if he can just sit down and get his knee, we don't need him. There's no rush for him. If he can sit down and get healthy and maybe something figures out, there's something that clicks on that end in terms of getting his health or whatever is necessary for him to not be injured as much, maybe we find a diamond in the rough because he can play. But they very much drafted him knowing that it was very likely he would not play for quite some time. And you're not going to see Kevin McCullar play a game for the Knicks this year. I feel comfortable saying that.
Is it based on your knowledge and experience, is it like, what's the tear, a different type of tear? Or is this a normal timeline for recovery, or they just being cautious?
To my knowledge, he's just a guy that has had like chronic injuries. And I think when these teams look into players and they draft them, they get in there and they look and they can tell if something maybe seems like a chronic issue or just like a one-off issue. Or so you obviously can't tell 100%, but these doctors are trained enough to know if something scares them or not, or if they should be cautioned or not, right? And I think that's why so many teams passed on McCullar. And the Knicks knew what they were signing up for because they weren't in a rush for him. They didn't need him. I think the view around the league, I'll say this, I think the view around the league around McCullar at his draft point was that he was going to be a guy that probably dealt with chronic injuries. So, and there's only so many teams that can afford to use draft capital, and I think hope that a guy can, maybe the doctors are wrong, or maybe they figure it out, or this, that, and the third.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So no expectations for Kevin this year. A shout out to Chris Dayton. Chris Dayton on the Twitter side. His question is, after the Knicks last night, quote unquote, telling on themselves on the defensive end and an up-tempo ball moving offensive effort, I found myself wondering where Mitch will fit when he's healthy, hopefully in a few weeks. We all know this isn't going to go 10 deep. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, if Mitch comes back, I think there's going to be ease in process one. Like, yeah. I think there could be 10 deep, 9 deep. I guess it's like, is Shamet in the rotation? Is he not in the rotation? Like, we still have to figure that out. It hasn't been enough sample size. But in terms of Mitch and Precious, like, I think Precious get the bulk of the minutes. They ease Mitch in. Now, if you're talking about like 2-3 months from now, how does that look? I think ultimately Mitch probably gets the nod. Maybe they play two bigs in that backup in the off the bench. But I think ultimately, like, if Mitch is healthy and Mitch looks like any semblance of the Mitch we saw before the most recent injuries, like Mitch is playing, like you said, it probably changes how the defense even looks, right? Like, Mitch can get up more than Cat and be disruptive. He doesn't necessarily move in space as well as Precious, but he's so big that it kind of makes up the space. So they can still be aggressive with Mitch. Obviously, he's not a guy that's going to get a rebound and push it up the floor like Precious can, even if it's just a few dribbles to get things going. It's going to be a different dynamic, but I think obviously Knicks fans know when Mitch is at his best what it can look like defensively for this team. That's something you got to play that if he's healthy. But I'd be curious to see if that means no more Precious, or if they maybe go a 9-man rotation of Cam, Deuce, insert starter, Precious, and Mitch.
Yeah.
So there's ways they can do it, but yeah, I think first and foremost they need to make sure. I mean, maybe they know, but we need to learn where Mitch stands in terms of coming back this year.
Yeah, good points there. Reed Shamar on the YouTube side, we did talk about Javonte Green as a potential wing, and any other wings you're thinking about as we look towards the trade deadline in just about a week from now.
Yeah, I mentioned before Simone Fontecchio in Detroit. I think he's making $7.6 million. Again, to your point earlier, that would take 2 players probably to get. And with the way Precious is playing, maybe that seems more unlikely now, but maybe there's a 3-team trade where something happens. Obviously, the Pistons have the cap space to make the trade deadline interesting. They're playing well. They could use they're a team that could afford to go after like a Zach LaVine. So maybe the Knicks get involved there. But certainly, I think the Knicks are in a tricky spot because, yes, they need more depth. But I think more than that, they need another wing.
Need another wing. Yeah.
So, do you trade 2 pieces to get that wing, even if it's like a C wing, because you know Fontecchio can hit open shots. He rebounds well for a small forward. He competes defensively. He struggled putting the ball on the floor this year. Came off of foot surgery this summer, and it seems like he's just never really kind of found his consistency this year. But he was a guy, people remember him in Utah, like really good role player. And he was really good when he got traded to Detroit last year. But He struggled, like I said, putting the ball on the floor this year. But if he can be in New York and just hit spot up threes, defend, rebound, like that's kind of what this group needs. But I go back and forth with this Knicks team. Do they, in order to get to a guy even at $7 million a year, they're going to have to trade 2 players, and one of those is going to have to be Precious. Assuming like Deuce isn't getting traded, right? We don't know that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Where do you weigh like having depth versus a depth piece that maybe helps the roster more? Like, where do you want your depth allocated, I guess is the question. And I think that's a question the Knicks have been asking themselves and will continue to ask themselves. Because like I said, to get other than like Javonte Green, or there's the pickings are slim in terms of like wings that could maybe make a difference that you could get for just swapping a Jericho Sims. Like, there's just not that many, 2 million wings making $2 million a year,
right?
That are worthwhile, that type of move. So I think Fontecchio is interesting because I do think he would help, but like I said, you'd have to trade a Precious and a somebody. Is that worth it? I understand not, if somebody thinks not. But like Javonte Green just makes the most sense to me. It's the most like you just player for player swap. I would throw in even a second with Sims to get it done, because I think for that type of deal, to make it that simple for a Knicks team that obviously has financial gymnastics it has to do with, given how the roster is constructed, like I would throw in a second to do that type of trade, because I think adding that wing depth is important for this group. So there's just, it's slim pickings given their salary situation. Maybe they can get involved in a bigger trade to help add some depth in a different way, but it's certainly going to be interesting. You never know. There's teams there's some very good draft prospects coming up. There are teams that might be interested in making themselves worse. Maybe you can unload Mitch for a second, just 1 second, and the team's willing to be bad for the next year, and hope that and this is another thing with the Mitch. If Mitch somehow finds a way to get back to where he was between now and the summer, whoever trades for Mitch could just turn around and trade him at the deadline for more than for another pick, for more picks, right? Like there is some risk versus reward to weigh if you're a rival team. Like, we can be bad now, rehab Mitch, and maybe if he's back to where most teams want to see him at, like we flip him at the deadline to add more. So I think that's a little bit far-fetched, but it's something like that the Knicks would be very thankful, I think, if an opportunity like that presented itself.
Yeah, great points. Definitely agree on all points there. And then last question, Keith B Gaming on the YouTube side says, if the peak of the Knicks is what we have seen in the last few games, what is our outcome come playoff time?
Oh, I mean, I think that's a team that can beat anybody. I mean, if you're putting up 143 back-to-back games, you're holding one of the best offenses and fastest offenses and deepest offenses in basketball to 106 points. The Kings game, like, I thought there were good defensive moments. It wasn't as complete as the Memphis game. De'Aaron, something's wrong with his hand. Like, obviously he was questioned before the game of the thumb.
He didn't look right.
He wasn't even featured. He wasn't barely bringing the ball. It looked weird. Then the Monk and Sabonis pick and roll gave the Knicks some hell at periods throughout the game, right? But like the Memphis game, and again, I talked to Jalen about it after. Like, this isn't we can't expect this every night.
Yeah.
But you can expect it more consistently than we've seen. And if they're able to tap into that more, the offense is going to be the offense. Like, I'm not worried about that. Like, if they get into the playoffs and they go shoot under 30% for three for a whole series because they went cold, like, you just got to chalk that up to the basketball gods hate New York, because this offense is built to roll out of bed and put up 120 on a bad day. I think defensively is the question. And if we see what we saw last night, every other game, every couple games, like, they can play with anybody in the league. The only team that I would still put above them is Oklahoma City.
And so they beat the number 3 team in the West last night. They got the number 4 team in the Nuggets coming up on Wednesday. The number 5 seed in the West coming up on Saturday. And the red hot number 2 seed in the Houston Rockets. They need revenge against the Rockets. Rockets beat the Cavs twice and the Celtics all in 1 week. The Amen Thompson experience is here. These young Rockets are smoking the league right now. But specifically with the Nuggets, anything that's jumping out at you with this matchup? You know, the Knicks dropped 45 dimes against this team in Denver earlier this year. It was the OG game. What are you thinking about this return match?
I thought that was their best win of the season pre the Memphis game. I think though Jokic had just come back. He missed like the last 3 or 4 games when he returned to that Knicks. I think he had just had his child. So he had just come back, but he was healthy. He just hadn't been playing. I think I feel like New York matches up well against certain teams, and Denver is one of those teams.
Me too.
Obviously, there's only certain type of coverage you can play with Jokic. And when you have Cat, who has the ability to blow past any kind of slow-footed big, who has the ability to put the ball on the floor, who has the ability to shoot, like that's going to cause difficulties. I like Denver. I love Jokic. I just think New York has a little bit too much firepower, and that Denver defense. Again, I haven't looked at their ratings lately, but it doesn't feel like it's as good as it. Not that it was always really good, but it still feels a step slow this year. They can put together some amazing offense, but I just think the matchup that the Knicks present in terms of Cat versus Jokic, his ability to put the ball on the floor, how Cat has performed against slower-footed bigs this year. With the way kind of Josh and OG and the attention to detail you have to have playing against the Knicks because of Josh's cutting and Josh's offensive rebounding, OG's cutting. I think it's just a weird matchup for Denver. I think the Knicks win. I don't know if that made any sense. Ultimately it comes down to how Cat has performed against slower footed bigs.
I agree with you.
I just think the Knicks offense looks good against teams that are playing in like a traditional drop or have like a traditional big.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I think they should be able to get the job done on Wednesday against the Nuggets. You spoke about Josh Hart. There was a lot made, a lot of all-star respect for Josh Hart over the last couple of weeks, whether it's the voting or the players going and speaking out, coming off of the triple-double in the against the Kings. Anything notable to you from the Josh Hart experience so far, man? Playing absolutely fantastic basketball for this team.
Yeah, and I've talked to him about it. When you cover this league or you watch it with the type of attentiveness that somebody like you does, you have a great appreciation for those X factor, those glue guys.
Yeah, definitely.
The KCPs of the world, right? Going from LA you can make the case the third best player during the bubble run for the Lakers. Helps Denver win, right? You go Draymond Green, you go Derek White, even Drew Holiday now at this point in his career. You just grow the Isaiah Stewarts, the Amen Thompsons, right? Like you just grow a Dylan Brooks. You grow a great appreciation for those guys who low maintenance on offense, still bring it every single night, even if the touches aren't there. They create their own touches. They create their own baskets. You just have a greater appreciation for those guys when you watch the game with the attentiveness that my job or even your job and your level of fandom presents, right? And I think for Josh, he's just of that cloth of guys that do everything it takes to win. Teams have to game plan for his ability to rebound, right? Like we talk about unicorns all the time, and it's always a 7-footer who can shoot threes and put the ball on the floor. Like we need to talk about it in terms of like the 6'4" guy who's leading the league in rebounding over the last month and second in or whatever, or 10th in rebounding in the entire league over the last year or whatever it is, and has 5 triple doubles at 6. Like that's not normal anymore. And he might not have the most like aesthetically pleasing game, Josh Hart. But if you watch basketball and you understand how important it is to have an offensive player who's low maintenance, who can create his own luck and his own opportunities and is solid defensively, like that stuff like makes champions. And Josh Hart, every team that wins a title has it. Josh Hart type player.
Yep.
And that's just where I walk away every single day is like if the Knicks win, Josh Hart is going to have a big impact on why the Knicks have entered their championship drought. Absolutely,
man. All-Star, are you headed to San Fran? What's your All-Star plans, man?
I'm gonna take the time off.
Okay.
Yeah, if it was somewhere closer, I'd probably go.
Yeah,
but I'm not really trying to fly across the country when I could grab a few days. The schedule's been nuts. I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Hopefully from somewhere warm. I'll go on a little vacation. But yeah, I'm not gonna go.
Yeah.
It's just hard to get days off.
Yeah, I got you.
During the season, so I'm gonna try to soak those in.
Do you enjoy those road trips? Like, are you a foodie? Do you go explore when you go on the road?
I do. I enjoy road trips. Like I have my restaurants in certain cities I love to go back to. I'm a big sneakerhead, so like I like going to different sneaker stores in different cities.
Yeah.
Now, and I hate complaining about this because it's first world problems, and I'm blessed to get paid to travel the country and write about basketball. Like I want to make that very clear, but I don't know if people understand. We don't fly on the team plane. Media does not. We're not. I get paid by the New York Times. Bondi gets paid by the Post. Popper gets paid by Newsday. Like that's who pays us, and so we don't get to fly on the team plane. So, for example, if the Knicks play in Toronto on a Tuesday night, but they have Memphis on a Wednesday or on a Thursday, they fly out of Toronto Tuesday after the game because they have a private plane. And they may practice in Memphis on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. There's no commercial flights that are leaving anywhere unless you're going from like Vegas to New York, a red-eye flight.
Yeah.
But there's no flights that leave that late, and most of the time we got to write anyway. So we have to get up on the first thing moving to make it to practice in the next city the next day.
Yeah.
So like that, you do that for a few months, like that kicks your ass, and that gets tiring. And that ages you. Like it's a lot of late nights, early mornings. But other than that, and again, that's first world problems. It's awesome to be able to travel the world, and I've gone to games. Pistons played in Paris a few years ago. Got to go to that. Mexico, Montreal, like these places that somebody from places where I'm from. Like when I was a kid, until I got this job, I had never been west of Missouri. And I've been covering the NBA for 8 years now. I've been all over the globe, so I'm grateful and thankful the opportunities and the places you get to see for sure. But it's it's the trying to catch a flight the next morning to the next city that really like kind of kicks your ass.
No, I can imagine that. What's your top 5 cities to eat? Top 5 cities to eat for James Edwards, man.
Does New York count?
Sure.
Like do I get okay?
Yeah.
All right. No order.
Okay.
Toronto.
Okay.
It's probably my favorite North American city.
Yeah,
if you've never been to Toronto,
love T-Dot.
Go to T-Dot, especially in the summer. Amazing Chinese food, people all walks of life. It's a beautiful place. Toronto, Portland, New York, Detroit, and there's some man, I'll probably go like Atlanta maybe.
Okay.
Or Memphis. I like barbecue.
Yeah.
Memphis maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, those are good choices, man. I asked you the question. I don't even have my 5, but
I'd like to know.
If I had my 5, obviously, being from New York, I got to put it up there. Obviously, it's the melting pot, and you can find anything at any time, and so that's always a bonus. I got to put New Orleans up there.
Yeah, I'll put New Orleans over whoever I said over Memphis. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm tripping.
I got to put New Orleans up there. They're in my top 5 for sure. I love the food down there. Yes. I got to put San Fran up there, man.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I mean, all kind of food as well, man. All kind of food. When I went out there for randomly for Knicks versus Golden State, from all the food around like Napa Valley, some French food, Chinese food, all type of food, man. I thought San Francisco's food was great.
That's a good one, and it's good food with a view. Like
yes,
you get a meal by the water, by the ocean.
Yeah. That's my type of vibe, man. I'm a big seafood guy, so I got San Fran on there. I'm trying to think what else. H-Town.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, I got to put H-Town up there, man. They will. That's all I do out there when I go to H-Town, man. Is just eat. Go eat.
There's nothing
else to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. You drive for miles and miles. You go eat. Sunday fun day. You go eat. You go eat some barbecue, some seafood, a little Papados. That's my speed. So I got to put H-Town up there. And then for 5, I have not been to Portland yet. I don't know 5. Miami's like one of those, like, it's more scenic.
Yeah.
You can get some good food in Miami, sure.
Different walks of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different. That's not a bad one at all.
Oh, you know it's a sleeper though. Have you been to Rhode Island?
I drove. I never stopped.
Okay.
I drove through it. Yeah.
Okay, Providence, you know, they got Johnson and Wales out there. It's a culinary town. Like all the graduates go out there, set up their own restaurants. Providence is a sleeper, man. Yeah. Providence is a sleeper. Rhode Island as a whole for good food, man. Very good food.
That's good to know. Maybe that's a summer trip.
Yeah. You can check Newport. It's a nice spot, man, up there in New England, man.
I'm gonna add that to the list. Thank you. I wouldn't even have peeped.
Yeah, there we go, man. There we go. All right,
I want to shout out Oklahoma City too.
Really?
As a good food place. Good barbecue. There's good burgers. Really, the only place I dislike, and this is a running joke from my time in Detroit, but I can't. Sacramento is just the only town that
trash.
Can't do it. Man. No good food. None to do downtown.
Nothing.
So I might as well keep it there. Sacramento already wants my head off, so let's keep it. Sacramento's the worst NBA city. Yeah. Worst NBA city, Sacramento.
No liking the beam in Sacramento for you. I hear that, man. What was I gonna say? I completely forgot what I was gonna say.
My fault.
No, it's all good. I haven't ate in Detroit. I've only driven through Detroit. I haven't eaten in Detroit. Chi-Town, good food. What do you think about
Chi-Town? Good food. Yeah, Chi-Town, good food. The thing with Detroit is, I don't know if people outside know, but it's very like there's a Mexican town.
Okay.
A lot of Greek food. Like I said, a lot of Greek food, a lot of Mexican food, a lot of Chinese. Like there's a lot of people from different parts. We have like I said, there's a Mexican town, like a pocket. There's a Greek town, a pocket. Chinese food. Detroit pizza. Like I don't like Detroit style, but there's good Detroit pizza.
Okay.
There's just a lot you can get there, and then they have like if you're into Coney dogs, I know New Yorkers can relate to us on that end.
Yeah.
A lot of Coney Island. Like it's just good food. I think people that go know. Just a lot of different walks of life in Detroit too, similar to New York on a smaller scale.
That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. Last question I had for you, man. I was in my nostalgia bag. I took the fans down a trip down memory lane, man. I think this past weekend, 25 years since one of my favorite groups of all time, the Locks, man, celebrating their first album, We Are the Streets. I saw your tweet. Yeah.
Yes.
Took a trip down memory lane. Everybody's retweeting with their favorite bars. Were you a Locks guy growing up? Trilogy.
Yes, bro. I'm a big hip hop head. My dad, shout out to Pops. He I have an uncle on my mom's side who was a DJ. I'm from Flint, Michigan, who was a DJ my whole life. And my dad would every week go by because CDs used to come out on Fridays for you young kids. Like we used to, or Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Tuesdays we would go every Tuesday. There would be CDs, and my dad would get multiple CDs every week. And I used to use my allowance, like my $5, $10 allowance every week to go get. Like I had Chic Luke solo albums.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, Jadakiss's "Kiss the Game Goodbye" was my. What was is that the one with Make Me with the Mariah Carey make?
I think so. Yeah.
Like that was middle school.
Yeah.
And obviously Chic, especially when I got to high school and I got on Two Dope Boys and the mixtapes. Chic was had a lot of mixtape. I love the Locks. Big Locks fan. My favorite Locks song. Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah.
It's a Mace song, but the Locks are on it. I love 24 Hours to Live.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Jadakiss, Nantucket, fuck it.
Yeah.
That's my jam.
Yeah.
I could go on. I love the Locks. I saw that and I got hyped when you posted that.
Yes, absolutely. And correction, shout out to Fab. He is right. That was their second album.
Yes.
We Are the Streets, but it's my favorite album from the group. No doubt. Yeah, shout out to Fab.
That's a good take too. I don't know if everybody would agree with that, but I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, I love that group, man. I saw them at Pier 17 at South Street Seaport last year in the summertime, and I was just in a Kid in the Candy store, man, just going bar for bar. It was an incredible concert. It was one of those, it was because 50th anniversary of hip hop, they were celebrating.
Yeah.
And it was one of those sponsored concerts. So I didn't really know if it was going to be cheesy commercial, they would come out for 2 songs and dip. But no, right. They went into their bag. They went into mixtape sets, album sets, solo album sets. It was a fantastic concert and a beautiful backdrop, man, overlooking New York City, man.
I'm so happy that the Versus thing happened as somebody who grew up I understand like I said, being a hip hop head, I understand the importance and the chokehold Dipset had on New York.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to and I listen, Purple Haze, Cameron, that album had me in a chokehold when I was in middle school. But I love Jadakiss. Me and my friends listen to Jadakiss. We listen to Styles P. For them to do that versus Dipset and to show the younger, like how many hits that the Locks, and I'm not even a hits guy, but just to like, everybody's like, oh, the Locks are just the street dudes. No. The Locks have so many jams that you just like, oh, I forgot Jadakiss was on this. Oh, I forgot Jada and Styles were on this. I forgot Sheik was on this with Insert Arm. Like they got so many jams, man. And I'm glad the younger generation was put on game because and they're like, it's dope to see a group that never fights and still together.
Right.
Never hear nothing wrong about.
They do business together. They got the juice
LOX.
bars. That's right. That's right,
man. It's beautiful. And
it
looks like they're in the studio now, so I can't wait for what's next.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Oh, JJ banned from TV. Absolutely, man. That was a classic, man. Fantastic Four. Nori on there. I mean, come on, man. Those are the days, man. Those are the days, man.
I miss posse cuts. We need to bring back posse cuts.
Yeah. And still one of my favorites was Green Ghost album, man. Styles P and Green Lantern. Classic. Absolute classic, man.
I might have to put that on today.
Yeah. Green Ghost.
I gotta run some errands. Yeah. I might put on Green Ghost.
Green Ghost Project, Styles P and Green Lantern, man. Absolutely phenomenal, man.
Styles has my favorite rap voice.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is about his voice, but he has my favorite. I think he has my. If I had to sit down, maybe I could think of a few more. But whenever somebody says who you read something like, what's your favorite rap voice? Styles is always the first one that comes to my mind. I just love his voice. It's so, I don't know what it is about it.
For sure, man. Well, we'll pick this up another time to be continued with our guy Trilogy, man. We got the chat going crazy with their favorites. We got the chat going down memory lane, man. So, hey, man, great show as usual, as I expected. And let's do it again, man. Let's catch up after the All-Star break. But continued success to you. Great job. And, hey, just let the people know where they can find you and everything you're working on, man.
Well, CP, I appreciate you having me as always, man. It's always a blast doing this. Thank you. I'm on Twitter at JL Edwards, III, Blue Sky, the same, but with the Blue Sky stuff at the end. Got a piece now up on The Athletic where I said, where I wrote about the Knicks told on themselves with how they played defensively, and this should be more of the standard going forward. And then on Thursday, I have a big piece I've been working on. Talked to a bunch of Knicks players for it. I don't want to give away the topic. But I also talk to players across the league. It's about something that everybody in this chat, I'm sure, can relate to, but kind of something that impacts players that people don't really know. So all I can say is check out for that for Thursday morning.
We'll look out for it, man. Have a great day, man, and we'll catch up, man.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Once again, that was our guy, James Edwards III, a.k.a. Trilogy, man. Salute to everybody in the chat once again. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Remember that today's show is brought to you guys by Mando Whole Body Deodorant, man. 72 hours of odor control. Hey, man, some of you guys can use that, man. It's all good. No shame in your game. But check out my guys from Mando. No aluminum. Safe products to use, and they have the deodorant in a number of styles, from the solid to the liquid to the spray. And like I said, we give you $5 off the starter pack so you can try out which one works for you and keep it pushing, man. KFTV is the code. And once again, we thank James Edwards for coming on, and we will see you guys Wednesday. First up will be our Bleacher Report simulcast, then followed by Knicks versus Nuggets play-by-play, and we'll cap the night off. Knicks versus Nuggets post-game live. So make sure you guys tap in with us. Number one show for the fans, by the fans, CP the franchise. Thanks again to James Edwards, and have a great day, everybody, man. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.